This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Jansen. The show is live as always and we broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live right now on YouTube with our whole show as always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today, we look at the aftermath of what could be one of the worst disasters on the African continent in recent memory. Numbers vary, but 67 South Africans are still reported to have died in the church building collapse in Nigeria. In business, consumer inflation quickened in South Africa, and we'll put a story to those numbers a bit later. And we continue to look at Tourism Month and South Africa's outlook. But first, let's get today's news from Katrine Malan.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Malan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. South Africans whose relatives had been visiting televangelist TB Joshua's church in Lagos, Nigeria, have again descended on Johannesburg's O.R. Tambo International Airport for news about their loved ones. A team of 10 experts left South Africa for Nigeria last night to assist in the recovery and repatriation of bodies following the collapse of a church building in the capital. President Jacob Zuma announced on Tuesday night that 67 South Africans died when the building collapsed nearly a week ago.
He experienced bad things like floods, other things, but this one is more shocking. He is also saddened about the situation, but he is on our side.
Staying in Nigeria, and Boko Haram insurgents have been blamed after at least 13 people died during a shootout between police and suspected suicide bombers at a teacher training college in northern Nigeria yesterday. Most of the victims were in a lecture hall inside the Kanu College, where two gunmen opened fire on students. President Goodluck Jonathan extended his condolences to the victims' families after what he called a dastardly attack. Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf hopes that the U.S. President Barack Obama's decision to send 3,000 troops to West Africa to battle the worst Ebola outbreak on the record would spur other countries to do the same. Johnson Sirleaf says her government is fighting back against the deadly virus, which has claimed the lives of some 1,300 people in Liberia. Then back in South Africa, a number of schools and businesses remain closed at Grabouw in the Western Cape following 3 days of protests. Residents are demanding proper housing, sanitation and running water. Residents clashed with police again and a section of the fire station was set alight. The mayor says he will meet the community representatives again tomorrow. And then international headlines. Just hours before Scotland's independence referendum, the fate of the United Kingdom rests on hundreds of thousands of wavering Scottish voters. In an intense final day of campaigning yesterday, leaders of both sides tried to convince Scots to seize the reins of history in a vote that has divided families and friends. While the outcome looks too close to call, the pro-independence camp has seen support surge in recent weeks as the no side's lead shriveled away. That top story and more, all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Katrine. Now, relatives of South African victims from the Nigeria building collapse disaster say they are disappointed with government's slow pace at assisting them. About 20 people are waiting at O.R. Tambo's International Arrivals Terminal, hoping that their loved ones are on this morning's flight back from Lagos. Now, for the latest, we cross to our reporter, Gillian Pillay, who's been waiting at O.R. Tambo International Airport for the arrival of two aircraft from Nigeria. Very good morning to you, Gillian.
A very good morning to you, Yeben. Yes, the two aircraft that you're talking about, it has, arrived here at O.R. Tambo International Airport. But when we arrived here, the scene was one of desperation, a real sense of anxiousness and uneasiness among South Africans who converged here at the arrivals terminal. Many have left. Those two flights that we're talking about, the one arrived at 5 to 5 and the other one 6. That scene when when South Africans, disembarked the plane, moving through the arrivals terminal here, was really one of an emotional reunion with their loved ones. But for those who really haven't received any word, it's a sense of them being left in limbo. Really, as you said in the intro there, Eben, they feel they're not getting any answers, any support from the authorities on the whereabouts, on the safety, or even just a little bit of hope about their loved ones. We spoke to a gentleman who has come here for a second consecutive day with his brothers. They've travelled all the way from Witbank. They haven't gone to work. They say they can't sleep, they can't eat. The last conversation that they had with their mom was last week, Wednesday, when she left South Africa for Nigeria. And he just related that raw emotional ordeal that many of us, we can put ourselves in their shoes, what they're going through, not getting any word or having any communication with that loved one that was in that or that is in that country. A real sense of desperation felt here among the relatives who wait for hours on end, standing at this terminal, hoping that they would see that face of that loved one walking through these doors. But for many, it wasn't the case today. That emotional reunion of relief more than anything at this stage here at OR Tambo International. Yep.
Gillian, just run us through the numbers of people that are there that are seemingly directly involved. There's a lot of speculation and I think a lot of misrepresentation of numbers and so forth going on. Can we speculate on the amount of people that are there that might have direct links to this number of 67 that has been reported on since yesterday?
I think even what has happened, in the tragedy. A lot of people have phoned the helpline, the International Relations helpline. Some of them are saying that, no authorities can tell them if their relatives' names are on this list. So a lot of today was about a group of 20 people hanging around here, coming to the airport, not because they were told that these flights are arriving, they're coming out of their own, just hanging around, checking, hoping, waiting to see if by chance that their loved ones would walk through these doors. We don't really have any numbers at this stage. The gentleman that I spoke to, the gentleman in communication with, they definitely have loved ones who were in Nigeria, who could be, the relatives who are safe, who haven't been accounted for, but possibly part of, and you don't want to say this, part of the fatality number that is varying, as you said. We don't have a clear indication of that number. That number could increase, and that's where we are with the numbers game. And that's why we've seen so many...
Well, unfortunately, it looks like we've lost the link with Gillian there at OR Tambo International Airport. But Gillian will keep us updated anyhow throughout today. What happens at OR Tambo, if there is any developments, if there are any people to talk to, she will do so. Now, just to recap, the world was shocked this week at the news that no less than 67 South Africans died in a tragic building collapse in Lagos, Nigeria. One of the first questions on everyone's minds, however, was, what were so many South Africans doing there in the first place? The building was believed to be a guest house for foreign members of the TB Joshua Synagogue Church for All Nations. For those of you who are not aware, Pastor TB Joshua is dubbed the prophet by fanatical followers because of his purported predictions and healing powers and promises to heal the terminally ill, even boasting with his own TV channel called Emmanuel.TV Network. It was not known how many people were inside the building when it collapsed, but keep in mind that Joshua preaches to massive crowds at his mega church every week, and according to his website, they host thousands of national and international visitors each year. Over the years, there have been many critics and several Nigerian pastors questioning his methods, but still, thousands flock to him each year. Now, to further this discussion and give us more background on the ways of TB Joshua, we are joined by Dr. Maria Fram-Arp from the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Johannesburg, as well as eyewitness apostle Paul Akarigbo, who was in close proximity to the guest house and says he went to the site just hours after it collapsed. But before we start with our interview this morning, let's just take a look at the work of TB Joshua.
God want to use you, but you have a problem.
Yes,
There's a controversy over a child.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want to say,
after giving words of prophecy to this man, pointing him to the root cause of his problem, the man of God moves on as Jesus did, ministering prophecy and deliverance to the congregation one after the other. For prophecy brings solution. At a point he came to this woman. Let's hear what he has to say to her.
you have to forgive this man.
Yes, sir.
Because it's too painful.
Yes, sir.
You know, this is your second disappointment.
Yes, sir.
Can you forgive?
Yes, sir. I will.
If you forgive, you have to withdraw the case.
Okay, sir.
Withdraw the case and put an end to that.
Okay, sir.
Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, come on. Come on. Where's your husband? Come on. Come, give me your hand. Where's your husband?
He's here with me. You gave him a prophecy.
The woman moves ahead to call her husband, and the husband turns out to be the man of God prophesied to earlier on about a controversy over a child. Indeed, the Spirit of God is all-knowing.
You know, you were sitting here.
Yes.
And I was telling you there's a controversy
Yes.
over a child.
Yes.
This is a son.
Yes.
And you did not answer me.
Yes.
This is your wife. I met your wife again. The same thing appeared to me.
Yes.
That there's a controversy issue.
Well, we've also been joined in studio now by Pastor Isaka Joe Haruna Isak, who is a colleague of Apostle Paul. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Better late than never, they say.
You're welcome.
Now, if I can start at the beginning, if I can just get your views around the work that TB Joshua does to set the scene. Doctor, if I can start with you.
I'm going to look at this from a more sociological perspective. And what we've seen throughout history is that when people are in places of uncertainty, when people feel oppressed, when they feel that they don't have access to the things they need for a good life, then very often people turn to forms of religion that promise them all sorts of healing powers. That's not to say that God doesn't exist. It's not to say that God can't heal. The question is, why do we see so many people going to a place like this? And we find throughout history that when people are under stress, they tend to turn to a religion that offers hope.
Some say false hope, Apostle Paul. What do you say? You told me beforehand you have had this experience yourself of being healed. Just give us your testimony, as it were.
I quite disagree with my colleagues here, because I don't think he has ever been into synagogue or been to any religious home for prayer or anything. If at all, maybe he has been to Israel. I will ask you a question straight away. Why do many people go to Israel? Everywhere in the world. I will leave that one for you to answer. But regarding the issue of healing, I went to synagogue in 1997. I was tested HIV positive. My mother had 15 children, 14 died. And afterwards, I was decided that I'm going to commit suicide. I dreamed in the night before the day I want to commit suicide. I saw this white guy saying to me, I will heal you and use you. I said, who are you? I don't believe Jesus. I don't go to church. My father is a serious tradition doctor. I don't go to church. In fact, I was involved in things that's not pleasing to Jesus Christ. And then when I got to know about TB Joshua, I went there. He prayed for me. And since that time, 1997, I'm HIV/AIDS free. So it is not because people are looking
It's a miracle that you are with us today. That's fantastic. That's your testimony. What are you saying to the work that TB Joshua does before we start the merits of this conversation?
Well, the job that TB Joshua does in every era, or I'll call it in every age, every cycle, every 2,000 years, there's a visitation of a being on earth. And in this our era or age, TB Joshua is here. And his service is to humanity, to heal, to assist people in their predicaments, in their problems.
Does he heal all people? We've got reports from the BBC who've done investigations into Channel 4, done investigation showing up a whole lot of fraudulent scenarios. We had rugby players in South Africa that went there. They had cancer. TB Joshua told them that you are cured of cancer now. They came back and they died very quickly. Excuse me, let me finish. Let me finish.
Yeah, okay.
And then we talk about these people don't have faith.
No.
Why do you then sell this kind of hope to these people and then your get-out clause is you don't have faith?
No. I was there. Pastor Saka, please, I'm sorry. I was there when these soccer player you're talking about was there.
Rugby players. So.
Rugby player. Prophet TB Joshua have never attended to that guy in the first place. And TB Joshua is not a healer. Jesus Christ is a healer. So people, we must not misplace the place of God to human.
Okay.
So
let's park the conversation about whether he does the good work or not, or whether he's a healer or not. It's not for us to decide in this forum. Let's talk about the people that died, because that is what this story is about. It's about the millions of people that are drawn there that are not being looked after properly. A building collapsed. TB Joshua says today that, and I'll quote what is the press release that came out today, that this is either the work of Boko Haram, an aircraft that flew over the building and sprayed a mysterious spray over the building and caused the building collapse. What is your view on that?
All right. Firstly, like you said, it's about the people that died, that lost their life, and the people that got wounded there. I want to first of all send my condolences to the family members and to all South Africans who
Please answer the question, sir.
Okay. I want to tell you that TB Joshua have made statement on Sunday. This happened on Friday. On Saturday, I and Pastor Saka, we flew to Nigeria because we want to actually have information by ourselves what really happened there. And on Sunday, TB Joshua come out on a live TV to say that this is an attack, and what happened was that immediately...
There was no attack, sir.
We
can see the video. There was no attack. There's no magical spray that you can spray on a building to make it collapse. There were three stories built on top of this building without following the regulations. In Nigeria, in the last 6 years, 100 buildings have collapsed.
Not one in that
More
area.
than 100 buildings have collapsed in 6 years in Nigeria because building rules are being flouted and it's the security of people are not taken seriously. Thank you.
Can I come in that area? In the area the Synagogue Church of All Nations is located, there have never been a history of building collapse. And when a building collapse, is either slide left, right, or sideways.
There's no scientific way for a building to collapse.
Have you looked at the World Trade Center? World Trade Center, the way the World Trade Center came down.
Aeroplanes flew into the building, sir.
Okay, that is good. Aeroplane flew into it. But in this case, 4 times an aeroplane hovers around a particular building. And on the 4th time...
Aircraft hovers over buildings every day in every city in the world,
Why
sir?
that particular building at that time? Why?
4 times.
And 4 times?
In every building, everywhere in the world, in every city, we have aircraft above our buildings. What kind of substance can you spray on a building to make it collapse?
Well, I believe the investigation will establish that in due course.
We hope that is the case, because if this is not the case, and you flouted building regulations, surely you are putting the lives...
Just a moment. The foundation of this building is capable of carrying 25, 30 stories. The foundation.
This is speculation. Let's leave that, sir, because you were the person... Excuse me, sir. You were the one who told me now, let's wait for the investigation before we make these fleeting statements. I want to come to you, Dr. Fromm, and talk about the scenario, because this is not the first time that TB Joshua Ministries have been involved in a tragedy. Last year, there was a stampede, a church that housed 15,000 people, had 45,000 people. Fortunately, only 4 people died in the stampede in Ghana. How do you put this kind of scenarios in perspective when you deal with this church? It's obvious that they are not putting the safety and security of thousands of people that come there as an absolute priority.
Let's park the question of whether God is healing people or not. One of the Christian ideals is to care for people, to provide for them. And the church is not doing that. If the building collapses, you've got to look at how it was built. Secondly, people died. And thirdly, people are grieving. What has the church done to support those who are grieving?
Okay.
How can the church allow so many people into a building that it becomes unsafe? And Christianity is a religion of care and compassion. And I don't see that being exercised, given that this church makes lots of money from the people who come to visit.
Doctor, if I may come in, have you ever been opportune to visit Synagogue Church of All Nations?
I've not been to the synagogue
So
church,
you
but
don't
I've
have
done 20 years of research into these kinds of churches in Africa.
Excuse me, let me come in there. I have been going to synagogue since 1997. We have hosted number of president leaders around the world. Before any president walk into any building, the security agent, the CIA, every one of them will check that building before they move in there. We have president living there 2 weeks, 1 month. Now, I want to go to your question. TB Joshua today have record of over 1 million scholarship, looking after the poor and widow, both Muslim, Christian, and every religion. So you don't have fact about what you're talking about, and I'm not going to go into that with you.
TB Joshua is one of the richest evangelists, televangelists in the world.
How do you come with that far?
This is a fact. It's a known fact.
It's a known fact.
It's a known fact. Yes.
Who made him to be rich? Who made him
to be rich? Yes. Desperate people.
Not desperate people.
Desperate people, of course.
Listen, the Bible said that seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be yours.
Yes, but
when you seek the kingdom first.
But in this case,
TB Joshua is not out for making money in the ministry. He always emphasized that return what comes from the ministry back to the ministry, back to the people. And that is why. Apostle Paul, let me come in there. He contract the best leaders in the world, the best architectural engineering in the world, the best cook in the world, the best builder in the world.
Excuse me, sir. You said let the investigation deal with that.
Yes.
Right?
No, I'm coming to the case that she said.
Let's park that, please. We're going to wait for the investigation.
Okay,
That's what we decided.
For the investigation, but she made a statement.
Let's wait for the investigation. I want to come to Dr. Frama. Please, don't attack the lady.
Okay.
I want to ask you about the rise of commercial religion in Africa. Where does it come from, and is it completely foreign to the African continent?
Can I
please?
Okay. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
The rise of what we call religious tourism is not new. In the Middle Ages, we had hundreds and thousands of people flocking to places where they could get healing. So the idea of people traveling on pilgrimage is not new.
Thank you.
My concern is how the church is handling those people that have been hurt and those people who've lost loved ones. And this is a moment where you can really live out your Christian message of compassion. What kind of scholarship has been set up for their children? What kind of support has been given to their widows?
It is very clear now, sir. Wait.
Okay.
Let me ask the question, then you respond.
Yes.
Okay. It has become very clear that the church refuses to accept responsibility for what has happened. The church comes out with a statement saying a magical spray was sprayed over the building and it collapsed. This is all part of it. From Friday, it took 4 days before an official number or rescue workers from other countries could come into the compound and assist in this rescue effort. Why, I ask you?
Okay. You introduced me as an eyewitness, right?
Yes.
Now, you have not been there yourself. I was there. Number one, she asked that if TB Joshua was a Christian or a real man of God, what has he done to the family of the people? As a Christian, you don't just speak, you act. The team of TB Joshua are on the ground in South Africa.
I asked you a legitimate question.
Listen, they are ground in South Africa. They've been meeting families in South Africa.
I asked you a legitimate question. Okay. Why are you not answering the question? I'm asking, why is the church not taking responsibility for what has happened?
No, look, listen. When I was there, the South African ambassador was there.
Please answer the question, sir.
He did not deny the problem.
Responsibility of what is happening or what has happened.
Exactly.
The church has taken responsibility. And it cannot come on air to tell everybody in the world that the church has taken responsibility. We got to do this. If TB Joshua can visit Haiti, you heard about the incident in Haiti, the earthquake. He was there with relief measures, and he gave scholarship to those unfortunate ones.
I'm not asking you about giving scholarships in Haiti. I'm asking about this incident. Why is TB Joshua not the visible face and dealing with this issue and talking to families and giving hope to people? Where is TB Joshua? Is the question.
The team on ground in South Africa, we're talking about.
Where is TB Joshua? Where is he?
TB Joshua team
So
are
you
ground in South
expect
Africa.
TB Joshua to be in South Africa,
He
be in
should be the
England, and be
person in
everywhere
front.
the world in this
He should be the
time?
person in front who should be managing
how do you
the
expect him
pain
to be in
and
the front?
helping the victims and
The
families
team-
who are sitting at airports lost, waiting for loved
The
ones.
question is this: how do you expect TB Joshua to be in England, be in South Africa, be in Nigeria, be everywhere? And this time he
There
has
has
to
been a
mobilize
radio
people.
and media
The people are
silence
already
since
on the
Friday.
ground. The people are already on
12:44,
the
this
ground.
thing happened. We have not seen
I
TB
guarantee you
Joshua
with time,
make
you'll
a statement.
Let me come in there. Come in there. Let us not put this to an individual. If you are a human being and you really care about the people that are affected, let's talk about how to arrest the situation and help the family. If the family are listening to you now on TV, what do you think they're going to say? So
Tomorrow, it will be a week later, sir. Tomorrow, a week, people would not know where their families are.
President Jokosuma spoke yesterday, day before yesterday. The Minister of Public Relations spoke yesterday. And this issue has to be dealt with diplomatically. She said, we cannot just go on
We
air.
cannot deal with this diplomatically. Families are sitting at airports all around Africa waiting for loved ones. There's no diplomacy needed here, sir. We need the church to come forward and tell people what has happened to their loved ones. It is almost a week later.
On ground in South Africa, they are meeting the family. Until 2 a.m. this morning, they are meeting the family. And I will not want to disclose that.
We just saw 20 families sitting at our Tambo International Airport with nobody communicating with them.
I'm not going to go into detail, but I know they're on team. They're on ground in South Africa. They woke until 2 a.m. yesterday.
Why are they not communicating with the families then,
They
sir?
made the family. They found the family. I have
TB Joshua has been missing for a week.
No. TB Joshua is not missing. He's alive. Your ambassador of South Africa was there with him yesterday in Nigeria. The Nigerian government were there. The Lagos State government, the Air Force officials, and all the agencies, including the team that left South Africa, they are on ground this morning in Nigeria.
Okay.
So this is not a hidden story.
We're running out of time. We're running out of time, unfortunately.
Listen, TB Joshua has promised the family, the deceased, and casualties that he is going to take care of them. And in due time, you'll see this in action. He has not. Why must he come to the public? These people never come to the public before they visit him.
And why has he not been visible on television?
So you want him to be on the television to say to the world?
This is a man who claims to see the future. He claims to see the future. Why did you then not see the future of this building collapse?
TV for a couple of weeks. Have you watched Emmanuel TV?
Don't let us
If you watch Emmanuel TV, he's been emphasizing on things, and besides, TB Joshua is not God.
Listen,
he's a prophet.
Listen, don't let us point fingers.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We've run out of time, sir. I thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for giving us your views, but it seems as if we will not find any alignment on this issue today because we're screaming and fighting and we are not dealing with the issue that is people have lost their lives and there has been very little communication with them, which is unacceptable. Thank you.
Take a responsibility and look after those involved and their family members.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. This is not a church. This is not a church. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's take a look at what's been happening on social media now. There is the question. Green Monkey asked, where was TB Joshua when this disaster happened? Couldn't he see it? People should stop idolizing these prophets. Trust in God. Wemba says, if he can see things, question is, why didn't he see this coming? Hashtag TB Joshua. Bekanim Gladche says, the synagogue only worried about TB Joshua's image while we mourn fellow citizens that were after his miracles. Very disappointed. That is a sentiment that is shared around Africa today. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Time to turn the wick a little bit down here at Newsroom. That was quite an emotional little interview series. But let's move to the clinical side of life, business news. South Africa's headline, consumer inflation quickened above market expectations yesterday, moving to 6.4% year-on-year in August. Here to turn all these numbers for us into words and how it will have direct impact on you as a consumer is Pittman Roos from the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you for joining us once again, Pittman. We spoke to you yesterday after the announcement, and you found it all quite interesting. If you don't mind sharing the thoughts that you shared with us, with the viewers.
Sure. So inflation is a very important benchmark for how we're doing as a society. It relates to, you know, how well off is your ordinary household. If inflation is high, it means that you have to pay more and more for ordinary goods. You have less to spend on non-essential items like luxuries. So high inflation equals bad times.
Bad news.
Yes, exactly. So the fact that it's 6.4 is significant, given that South Africa has an inflation target between 3 and 6%.
Yeah.
As long as inflation is between those two poles, it's a good thing, because then it's more or less under control.
Manageable.
Yes. So if the inflation goes above 6% and perhaps returns, it's
Let's
not...
just have a look at this is year-on-year consumer price index. Is that right? Or almost? We're looking at a graph of the last 6 months or almost a year, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah. So you can see it's been...
We're hovering just above the 6 points, which is starting to get into the red zone, really.
That's right. And the problem is that if the trend continues upward, then we're moving into very, very dangerous territory. Inflation target is worse affected, affects the poor.
The worst.
More the worst, because it's food inflation and it's core inflation.
It's the basics that really is affected. But why are we seeing such a high inflation rate now? Is it on the back of protracted strikes? What has pushed this up in the last quarter?
Mostly it's exchange rate and foreign commodities that we import. South Africa is a small economy, so we're very dependent on the rest of the world.
Yeah. We saw the graphic there of the repo rate. What's the correlation between repo and inflation, and how does it affect us?
Sure. So the Reserve Bank has to manage the situation, like you said. If inflation goes up, they have to increase the interest rates, and the decision is today whether they will. And that is to protect the currency, and so doing to protect...
So tell us about this announcement by the Reserve Bank and what it means. And, you know, we see the numbers, but put the story to the numbers for us.
Well, there's a strong possibility that they might increase today. And that means that we will have to pay more on our mortgages.
Yeah.
And that reduces the money supply in the economy. And doing so reduces demand ultimately. So that's the way that you can counteract inflation.
Yeah. Well, that's not good news for all of those of us that own properties, Pittman, unfortunately. Another topic or big story on the international news today. We see a landmark referendum in the United Kingdom. Scotland wants independence. Sure. How will it affect the South African rand and the South African economy going forward if there is a yes vote?
Very little, because I think we have very strong ties with England, so our investor profile won't change that much. It is an interesting development, though, so we'll have to watch what happens there.
Well, Pittman, thank you very much for joining us and telling us about this. You know, the way people reported it here in South Africa, it felt almost if they vote yes in Scotland that our economy was going to collapse. But you bring us good news, as always. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
That's Pittman Roos from the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry giving us his views on, well, the quickening of headline consumer inflation and how it affects you. If you own a house, you might pay a couple of R100, maybe up to R500 more in the months to come. Now, the World Travel Awards are held annually to acknowledge, reward and celebrate excellence across all sectors of the global travel and tourism industry. Now, this year, Cape Town was voted Africa's leading destination and Africa's leading cruise port at the World Travel Awards of 2014. And to talk a bit more about this exciting news, we're joined today in our Sea Point studio by Cape Town Tourism CEO, Enver Dumini. Good morning, Enver. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Evan.
Another two International World Travel Awards this year. Cape Town's doing something right, but Aren't you getting sick of getting awards?
No, even I don't think we'll ever get sick of receiving these accolades and awards, whether it's from the World Travel Awards, the industry themselves, or even just from visitors through TripAdvisor.
What is it that Cape Town is...
We're definitely not sick of it.
What is it then that Cape Town is doing right then?
Sure, what are we doing right? I think it's a myriad of things. There's, of course, the natural beauty we have as a destination. There's an interesting culture and a mix of those cultures. But for me, it's also a bit more than just, the pretty pictures. It's about making sure that what we sell as a destination is actually lived by and executed by a professional and collaborative and also committed tourism industry. So as Cape Town and Cape Town Tourism, what we do is we kind of connect visitors, tourists, with industry product and also with the support of local and provincial government. I think it's that through those collaborative efforts that make sure that this destination is one of the most sought after destinations in the world.
And I want to talk about the other provinces in South Africa. It's a beautiful country that has so much unique to offer. How do you as Cape Town then use your popularity, for lack of a better word, to try and connect the rest of the country with the people that come to your shores?
Well, interesting enough, I think if we go to some research, is that what we found is that international tourists actually visit at least 2 provinces. So whether they go to Gauteng first and then end up in Cape Town, or they start their journey in Cape Town and end up in Durban, it's through those gateways that we allow then, travelers to connect. And it's about the positioning. But more importantly, I think if we look at South Africa, is that each province, each city, each town has something unique. It's about putting those interesting things together and packaging it smartly, and then of course using all our channels, whether social media, anything online or through traditional media, and promoting our offerings to a global audience. So I think it's, if you're South African, we are extremely blessed. Imagine trying to do all that South Africa and Cape Town has to offer in 10 days. And I think that's what makes people come back, is that they can't experience everything, and it's because the first experience was so amazing that they come back and they, of course, influence others to also come to our destination.
Enver, I want to talk to this thing about being the leading cruise port on the continent. Now, I grew up in Cape Town myself, and there was never a cruise ship in sight when I grew up in Cape Town. It always seemed too far away from the rest of the world. Where does this thing come from, and where do you cruise to from Cape Town?
Well, interesting enough, I think if we look at it, it's the location of the current cruise terminal, and it's in probably the biggest and the most sought-after attraction in Africa, which is the V&A waterfront. So I think it's because of that location that ships are coming in. We've seen a few also disembark from here, but also because there's a harbour there that can also assist with some of the maintenance required for the ships. Which again is interesting because again that's part of the economic spin-offs from cruise liners, and because of that the city and the province along with the V&A waterfront are going to invest into creating a dedicated terminal for cruise liners. So this is all part of the bigger picture for tourism.
Now, Enver, on a more serious note, as if this isn't serious enough, Ebola is a real threat in Africa now to tourism, and we see that the rest of the world sees Africa as a whole. Has it affected tourism in Cape Town? Are people complaining that occupancy rates are maybe a little bit down and people are not booking so much for the upcoming peak season, or is it business as usual in Cape Town?
Well, I think interesting enough, it's not business as usual. When we've spoken to trade, once we've heard about the Ebola and the impact, trade actually advised that there's cancellation in your bookings already going forward, specifically from the Asian markets. And if we understand the Asian markets, they were affected by H1N1 virus, bird flu, etc. So they're a lot more cognizant of the fact of health issues that would affect their citizens. So they act a lot quicker. And the concern for us as a tourism industry is that this will take long for us to recover from, because again, irrespective of whether Cape Town is like almost 6,000 kilometers away from affected areas, which is probably the same distance from, let's say, Mumbai to Paris. From perception perspective, we know that people look at the content, like you rightly said, as a country. And our job is to kind of address those inaccuracies in the media, with the social media, to proactively start addressing it by putting out the facts. To say, for example, you can't get Ebola through the air, which unfortunately was made popular through movies in the late 90s, like Outbreak.
Yeah.
So these are challenges for the industry, but I think if we look at South Africa and Cape Town and the tourism industry, I think we bounce back quite well. We've gone through a lot tougher things. If we go back 2 years, there was the ash cloud incident that affected travel. And these are all par for the course. So I think it's a bit concerning for us, specifically from the new markets where we're going into. But if we look at our traditional markets, where a majority of our visitors still come from, the Ebola hasn't really affected them, or at least us from a destination perspective.
Well, Enver, you've got your website right on screen right now. Just tell us quickly what people should be looking out for on there.
Well, I mean, people want to go to our website. It's www.capetown.travel. And we have a myriad of things from, letting you know what the latest events are, what's happening in the city. We've got platforms where we allow locals to actually talk about the city through their voices and their experiences. We leverage social media by pulling all those streams into our website. We also tell you what the coolest places to do, what to do when it's raining in Cape Town. There's so many things to do that's for free as well, so it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. So I think for us it's a platform where we have a lot of locals as well as international visitors coming to, and about an average of 100,000 visitors to that website per month, of which about 50 to 60% is domestic. So it is the port of call. Yeah.
To get you off script quickly, before we go, you've got 15 seconds to tell me, is it still safe to walk around in Long Street after 2 at night in Cape Town?
Well, if you're going alone, we always tell you it's, go together, rather go with people. It's as safe as you want it to be. This is a problem in all major cities. But, always ask your concierge, contact Cape Town Tourism where we can advise you. And, I think it's being a lot more mindful. And, common sense sometimes is not common. So we always try and proactively advise tourists and travelers through the industry to be safe.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Enver Dumini, the CEO of Cape Town Tourism, doing a fine job in selling one of the best destinations in the world. Thank you for joining us. Well, let's move on and take a look at what's on social media right now. It says there, Gabriel Taylor says, England is scared of Scotland breaking away, or scared rather, of Scotland breaking away. Its main asset will no longer be in their control. North Sea oil. Vote yes, Scotland, says Gabriel Taylor. Yes, that's what it's about, I suppose. Capital Trend says Scotland prepares to vote on the fate of the United Kingdom. Scotland decides today. A landmark day it is. Brief says, with best wishes to all our good and old friends in Scotland on this day of all days. Whatever happens, however it goes, thinking of you. Brief Solutions, that one. Well, now shifting our focus to Pretoria. Cool Capital's world's very first uncurated Guerrilla Biennial is apparently happening in our very own capital city here in South Africa. It's an exhibition of ideas by Pretoria's residents that offer them the opportunity to rediscover over 100-year-old city. The program includes different events that offer a wealth of art, architecture, urban and graphic design exhibition, as well as performances. Well, it all only draws to a close on the 16th of November. That's still 2 months almost, which also happens to be Pretoria's birthday. Now, here to tell us more, we are joined by the organizer of Cool Capital's Open Foundry events, Ilani Willemse. Good morning, Ilani. Thank you for joining us.
It's lovely to be here.
Just tell us exactly, I said a mouthful there. What is exactly is the DIY Guerrilla Biennial, is it right?
Well, the thing with Cool Capital is that it's community-driven. It's a celebration of creativity organized by people from the community. This entails a vast amount of art exhibitions, music concerts, film festivals, and everything is organized by the community. The other part of the Guerrilla Biennale definition of Cool Capital is that everybody is donating their time. All the organizers, all the project coordinators, directors, everybody is doing it completely pro bono. They're giving back to the community in a celebration of art and trying to inspire change.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. Just tell us the type of events then. Who can people expect to see, what they should be on the lookout for in the Cool Capital, as it were?
Well, like I said, there's more, I think more than 100 events taking place. Among this, there's a documentary on the architect Norman Eaton, which debuts next week, Wednesday. There's an Open Foundry Day. There's a rooftop exhibition curated by Gordon Froud. There's a lot of pop-up galleries in the inner city, rooftop film festivals. There's really a lot happening, so I can't really just mention one. Yeah.
Those are some of the standout ones. And, you know, in today's world, people are more connected, they think. I think people are more disconnected than we were before because of social media. They say they are more connected to things, and people want to be more connected. How can people then be part of this project, be part of this celebration? How do people become connected to it?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the idea is that people take initiative. It's a community-driven thing. So a lot that's happening is based on like a cultural exchange or a skills exchange kind of thing. One example that I can mention is the school project. Artists from around Pretoria are collaborating with some of the schools in Pretoria, and they're basically guiding them along the way to create a public sculpture on their school grounds. And everything is done by the students and by the children. And the artist is basically just teaching them to look at their environment differently and helping them develop a concept of what they can do on their school grounds.
And I'm particularly interested in the Open Foundry event, which is the one that you're involved with.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that event.
Pretoria has a very rich artistic heritage. We've got Anton van Vaux, Eduardo Villa. Some of the museums in Pretoria host the biggest art collections in the country. And early in the year, we had a meeting where a lot of the sculptors from around Pretoria came together. And then after a little bit of a discussion, we thought of the idea to host a foundry day, because Pretoria has a lot of individual foundries across the city. So we host the oldest foundry in the country, which opened its doors in 1931, Renzo Vignali. There's a lot of academic institutions that give sculpture as on a tertiary level. The first foundry exclusively run by women is also...
And they grow as productive adults within our democratic society. You have demonstrated that once again in your State of the Nation as you and ourselves commence the new and fifth administration of democratic South Africa. You outlined many challenges that you have observed in the course of election years, and many of us have observed as well on the ground. You have indicated very clearly that we require to express, both in word but more importantly in action, a greater sense of urgency in respect of how we address people's concerns, be they residents within the city or village, be they businesses, small or big, that operate within our cities or rural areas as well, or be they visitors to our country. Today we hope that you will, and I'm sure you will, give us your thoughts and vision for South Africa, not just 20 years ahead, but in the next year or two. What we as the local government constituency, which includes representatives of provincial governments and administrations and other national departments and their ministers as well, what we could do to fulfill your vision, what we could do to express completely the passion that you